My name's Warren Hayes. I'm 68 years old, retired, and for the first time in decades, I'd spent 2 whole months wandering around Europe with nothing but a suitcase and a bad habit of buying espresso every 3 hours. When I finally got home to Cedar Ridge, Illinois, I rolled my suitcase up the driveway, smiled at the old maple tree in the yard, and stuck my key in the front door. It stopped halfway. I frowned. I tried again. Nope. Brand new lock. Now, most people would have freaked out right there. Me? I just stood on the porch and chuckled under my breath. Well, I'll be damned, I said. They actually did it. I pulled out my phone and called my son, Ethan. He answered on the second ring. Dad, hey buddy. Quick question. Why doesn't my key fit my own front door? Silence. Then came the sigh. You know the one. The fake, practiced sigh people use when they've rehearsed a speech in the mirror. Dad, we were going to talk to you about this. I sat down on the porch swing. Were you now? You haven't been yourself lately. Claire and I have been really worried. We've had to make some difficult decisions. I laughed. Difficult for who? Dad, please don't make this harder. We've arranged for a care facility. A really nice one. They're coming to pick you up this afternoon. I stared at the lawn while he talked. My own son was trying to put me away like an old recliner nobody wanted anymore. You changed the locks, I said. It's temporary. Home. And the house has been transferred into our management company. That way we can handle your affairs properly. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. You know what, Ethan? What? You finally did exactly what I hoped you would. What does that mean? Nothing. Enjoy the day, son. I hung up. Then I texted my attorney. They took the bait. File everything. And that, my friends, was when the game officially began. What Ethan didn't know was that I'd spent the last 6 months building a trap with his name already engraved on it. People think betrayal hurts because someone steals your money. That ain't it. Betrayal hurts because you remember teaching that person how to ride a bike. I raised Ethan after his mother passed away. Worked 80-hour weeks running a freight company. Missed birthdays. Missed vacations. Missed sleep. But I made sure my kid never missed a meal. Private schools. Paid. College. Paid. Wedding. Paid. First house. Paid. Credit card debt. Paid so many times I should have gotten a loyalty card. And somehow, all that generosity turned into entitlement. 6 months earlier, I came home unexpectedly from a fishing trip. I walked into my study and found my daughter-in-law, Claire, photographing my financial documents. Bank statements, investment accounts, tax returns, the whole enchilada. She nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw me. Oh, I was just organizing things. Funny, I said. My paperwork usually stays organized when nobody's taking pictures of it. She laughed nervously. I pretended to believe her. That night, I called my attorney, Marcus Bell. Marcus, I said, I think my family's about to rob me. He was quiet for a second. Do you want to confront them? Nope. What do you want? I smiled. I want to give them an opportunity. Because sometimes the easiest way to catch a thief is to leave the vault door cracked open. The next morning, Marcus and I created the single document that would ruin Ethan's life. I own my home outright. No mortgage. No payments. Nothing. That made it the perfect target. Marcus and I dug through old files and found a defective power of attorney draft from years ago. Wrong language. Expired references. Missing requirements. Completely unenforceable. We placed it in the top drawer of my desk. Then I booked a 2-month trip overseas. If Ethan and Claire were honest, they'd ignore it. If they were greedy, well, let's just say I wanted to see how far they were willing to go. Before I left, Marcus asked me one last question. Are you absolutely certain? I looked at the house where my wife and I had raised our son. If I'm wrong, I lose nothing. And if you're right, I picked up my passport. Then they lose everything. 3 weeks before my flight, I made one more move that nobody saw coming. A lot of folks think being rich means buying fancy cars. Nah, being rich means understanding paperwork. 3 weeks before I left for Europe, I opened a massive line of credit against the house. The bank approved it immediately because my financial history was spotless. I borrowed nearly every dollar of available equity. Then I moved the money into a protected trust that only I controlled. The house looked valuable from the outside, but financially, it was carrying a gigantic anchor. I didn't tell Ethan. I didn't tell Claire. I simply boarded my flight to Rome and let them think the house was a $2 million piggy bank waiting to be smashed open. Turns out greed makes people skip their homework. While I was eating pasta in Italy, my son committed the biggest mistake of his entire life. Back in my penthouse downtown, Marcus sent me a live video feed from a private investigator attending the open house. I watched strangers walk through my living room. I watched Claire pour champagne into my late wife's crystal glasses. And I watched my son lie. "Oh, we've been taking care of my father for years," Ethan told the buyers. "His medical expenses have been overwhelming." I almost spit out my coffee. This kid hadn't paid for my lunch in 20 years. Claire chimed in. "He became paranoid and aggressive. Selling the property is the only way we can keep him comfortable." "Comfortable? Honey, I was sitting in a penthouse with heated floors and a river view." Then Ethan slapped the final coat of nonsense on the story. "I acquired this property through a strategic investment." I burst out laughing. "A strategic investment? Boy, I changed your diapers." The buyers nodded politely, completely unaware they were listening to a professional-grade fairy tale. When the feed ended, I closed my laptop. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused, because the moment they found a buyer, the real show would start. 3 days later, Ethan called Marcus screaming so loudly the receptionist heard him through the walls. A cash buyer had signed an offer. Ethan was celebrating like he'd won the lottery. Then the title company ran the search. That's when the phone call started. The buyer's attorney wanted to know why there was a massive secured debt attached to the property. The bank wanted to know why ownership had suddenly changed hands without authorization. And Marcus wanted to know if Ethan preferred coffee or tea before hearing the rest of the bad news. Ethan stormed into Marcus's office. "You did this." Marcus folded his hands calmly. "My client protected his assets. You trapped me." "No, Mr. Hayes. You trapped yourself. You forged documents and transferred property you didn't legally own." Claire turned pale. "You can't prove that." Marcus slid a folder across the table. Inside were surveillance records, electronic filings, witness statements, and enough evidence to wallpaper a courtroom. Ethan's face lost all its color. For the first time in his life, my son realized that consequences had finally arrived. That evening, Ethan showed up at my penthouse begging for a conversation. I opened the door and found my son standing there looking like he'd aged 10 years. "Dad, we need to talk. You should have thought of that before changing my locks." He stepped inside. Claire got carried away. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so the forged signatures forged themselves? We were trying to protect the family." "The family? Son, you tried to have me picked up in a van." He sat down and buried his face in his hands. "We're going to lose everything." I poured myself iced tea. "That tends to happen when you steal things." He looked up desperately. "Please, just tell the bank the transfer was authorized." There it was. Not an apology. A request. I leaned forward. "Ethan, if you'd come to me honestly, I would have helped you. I always did. But you decided I was easier to bury than to speak to." Tears filled his eyes. "I made a mistake." "No," I said softly. "You made a plan." The next morning, Claire disappeared and left Ethan holding the entire disaster by himself. Claire hired her own attorney. Funny how quickly romance evaporates when felony charges show up. She claimed Ethan handled everything. Ethan claimed Claire pressured him into it. They pointed fingers so hard I thought both of them might sprain a wrist. The management company they created was frozen. The home sale collapsed. The bank initiated proceedings to unwind the fraudulent transfer. Neighbors who once envied their lifestyle suddenly crossed the street to avoid them. A week later, Ethan called again. "Dad, Claire moved out." I sighed. "Are you okay?" "No." It was the first honest thing he'd said in months. When I finally agreed to meet my son for lunch, he brought something I never expected to see. We met at a little diner near the river. Ethan looked exhausted. He slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" "A letter." "From who?" "Me." I opened it slowly. Inside were 6 handwritten pages. No excuses. No blaming Claire. No blaming stress. Just the truth. He admitted he'd spent years resenting my success. He admitted he'd become addicted to the idea of inheriting wealth he never earned. And he admitted that somewhere along the line, he stopped seeing me as his father and started seeing me as an obstacle. I read every word. Then I folded the pages carefully and put them back in the envelope. "That's the first adult thing you've done in a very long time," I told him. He wiped his eyes. "Is there any chance you can forgive me?" I stared out the diner window. Forgiveness is a funny thing. It doesn't erase what happened. It just decides whether the wound gets to control the rest of your life. I had one final decision to make, and it would determine whether Ethan walked away with nothing or with a chance to rebuild. A month later, the legal mess was largely resolved. The fraudulent deed was voided. The property returned to my name. The bank remained secured against the debt I had legally created. And Ethan sat across from me in Marcus's office waiting for judgment. I placed a folder on the table. "What's this?" he asked. "A job offer." He blinked. "What?" "My old company's new owners need someone in operations. Entry-level management. Decent pay. Long hours." "You're serious?" "Dead serious." After everything I did, I nodded. "You don't need another handout. You need a chance to earn something." Tears rolled down his face. "I don't deserve that." "Probably not," I said. "But your mother would have wanted me to give you one anyway."